This week's blog post is on the Enchanted exhibition at the Rockwell Museum. It's part 1 of 2. From June 12th to October 31st, 2021, the Norman Rockwell Museum has on display Enchanted, a history of fantasy illustration. The exhibition includes somewhere between 100 and 200 works, filling 4 rooms. In this post and next week's, I'm sharing a dozen or so of my favorite works from the exhibition. Just a few words of introduction. If, like me, you live firmly in the real world, you may wonder what the point is of looking at paintings of people fighting dragons and monsters and ogres, oh my. But here's the thing. A painting's literal subject is not the same as its theme. You can read a painting of St. George killing the dragon as a reminder that humans can overcome huge obstacles. The sight of a hero successfully battling evil can ramp up your own courage to battle less lizard-like foes and obstacles. For more on this, see my essay on Harry Potter. There's a link in the blog post. If you refuse to look at art whose literal subjects you consider irrelevant, you'll miss a great deal of fascinating, exuberant, and inspiring art. Don't cross Rockwell's Enchanted exhibition off your list because it's fantasy art. Another point. Most of the paintings in this exhibition are done in crisp style with vivid glowing colors. These artists are technically very accomplished. I find a moment's rest in seeing anyone do their work this well. For heaven's sake, or Olympus's sake, or Asgard's, given this subject of this exhibition, please don't use my blog posts as an excuse not to visit the exhibition yourself. First of all, the actual paintings are often several feet tall. Looking at photos of them on a small screen cannot convey their impact. Also, I took my photos using a handheld camera without a flash, in accordance with museum regulations. That means the colors are slightly off and the details may be slightly blurred. Since these artists, without exception, render amazing details, the blurring is a serious problem. You can see in this one, the one that I took is on the right, and it's definitely more yellowish than the one that they use on the cover of the catalog and for the promo of the exhibition. I could, of course, mess around with this in Photoshop, but since I don't have the original in front of me, I'm very reluctant to start fiddling in Photoshop. The last reason for visiting this exhibition, and probably the best, is that I'm showing you my personal favorites. But you are not me, and there are certain to be a number of paintings that will mean more to you. If you absolutely can't make it to the Berkshires in western Massachusetts this summer or fall, a catalog of the exhibition is available. It's called Enchanted, a history of fantasy illustration. This painting of St. George is a very recent work, created as an illustration for Dragon Con 2010. I like the twisting, energetic pose of the man in armor, and I like the fact that he's willing to take on that enormous reptile. My husband loves this painting because St. George was the first superhero that he ever came across at age 8 or so. Again, it's perfectly acceptable to like a painting for its subject, or for some aspect of the way the figure or the scene is shown, for its style, or for the technical mastery, or because it speaks to your personal history. Donato Giancola began painting in the 1990s. You can see his website. There's a link in the blog post for more of his works. His favorite artists include Hans Memling, Jan van Eyck, Velázquez, Caravaggio, Vermeer, Mondrian, Rembrandt, Rubens, and Titian. Man has good taste. Among his clients are Lucasfilm, National Geographic, CNN, DC Comics, Microsoft, The Village Voice, and Playboy magazine. Next up, this is Legends of Charlemagne by N.C. Wyeth, painted in 1923. It has a great composition in vivid colors. Wyeth's fame and popularity in the early 20th century came from doing book illustrations such as this. You can still buy reprints with his illustrations of books like Kidnapped, The Last of the Mohicans, and Rip Van Winkle. For more of his work, see my Facebook post on the N.C. Wyeth exhibition at the Brandywine Museum in 2019. This painting is now owned by the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, which is the best reason I've heard in years to visit Los Angeles again. But the museum isn't going to open until 2023, so no rush there. It would be really interesting, don't you think, to sit down and do a comparison of Wyeth's Man Killing a Dragon and the Giancola one that they use on the cover of this catalog. Look at the armor that the two are wearing. One of them is completely covered, one of them is not. One of them is attacking the dragon with a hatchet, one has a sword. In one of them, the dragon is far behind, and one of them, the dragon is wrapped around the fighter. What do you think each of these says about the man who's fighting the dragon, and which do you prefer, and why do you prefer it? These are the kinds of questions that I'm teaching you to think of in my next book, Getting More Enjoyment from Paintings You Love. If you're on my mailing list, you'll be notified when it comes out. Next up is The Hand of the Queen by Victor Guy, 2019. This image was commissioned by HBO for the final season of Game of Thrones. It shows Tyrion Lannister, the hand of the queen to, I don't know how to pronounce this woman's name, Daenerys Targaryen. He is caught in a feud between House Lannister and House Targaryen. The elegant stylization of the lion's fur caught my eye. It reminds me of some medieval frescoes of lions at the Metropolitan Museum's cloisters, which were painted around 1200. The label describes the hand of the queen as digital and mixed media on paper. I can't tell where the digital ends and the mixed media begins. It is really a remarkable synthesis of media. Guy, a native of Hong Kong who studied at the Rhode Island School of Design, has done work for McDonald's, Apple, Johnny Walker, American Express, and others. I've given you a link to her website. Danger, it is a very distracting website. Next up, The Way of Kings, 2010, by Michael Whelan. This is the cover for Brandon Sanderson's book, The Way of Kings. I have no clue what that way is or who these kings are, but I love this painting for the combination of bluish purple and orangish yellow, which is among my favorites. Don't know why, but it is. I love it for the way the figure in the foreground stands defiant, and for the way the light glows through his cape, and I love the way the clouds in the valley swirl, drawing attention to the two figures and adding enormous drama to the painting. Just imagine it without those clouds, for instance. Whelan's first book illustration was for Anne McCaffrey's The White Dragon, 1978. He has since illustrated works by Stephen King, Pierce Anthony, Robert A. Heinlein, H.P. Lovecraft, and Edgar Rice Burroughs. I've given you a link to his website. I especially like the retrospective page on his site, where you can trace his development and his interests over decades. A print of this painting, The Way of Kings, is available on Whelan's site. Next up, Bruce on the Beach, 1921, by N.C. Wyeth. Have I mentioned how much I love N.C. Wyeth? This illustration, which is 3 feet or so high, was painted for Jane Porter's The Scottish Chiefs. Robert the Bruce, 1274 to 1329, led his country against England during the First War of Scottish Independence, and he ruled Scotland from 1306 until his death. Shown here is the moment when he returned from forming an alliance with the King of France. Stepping onto the beach, he told his friend, "This earth shall cover me or support my throne." Courage and perseverance. I like that. You can see more of N.C. Wyeth's paintings in my Facebook post. This one is Gandalf, 1999. I am not going to attempt to pronounce the artist's name. He's Serbian, born in 1965. The artist describes how he came to paint this work and its effect on his career in a post that I've given you a link to. I've also given you his homepage so you can see more of his work. You can also follow him on Facebook. This is a quote from one of his posts on Facebook. Quote, "More than a decade ago, I was still very much preoccupied with painting from life and produced a number of still life and plein air landscape paintings. It had a significant impact not only on the further development of my painting abilities, but also improved and enriched my fantasy artwork. All that we dream of and fantasize about is firmly anchored in the knowledge of the reality we perceive around us. Sharpening of the perception of the physical world will improve our ability to dream in color and form." And the last one for this week, Cole of Valusia, 2006, by Justin Sweet. This is an illustration for Cull, Exile of Atlantis by Robert E. Howard. Beginning in 1929, Howard wrote a dozen stories featuring Cull the Conqueror, who was born in Atlantis and became king of Valusia. Howard's more famous creation was Conan the Barbarian, who debuted in 1932. I haven't read any of the Cole stories, but that doesn't matter. I like this painting for the posture of the figure and for his expression, even though I know nothing about him. Unfortunately, my photo is slightly blurred, and I'm pretty sure the colors have far too much yellow. Justin Sweet has illustrated many books and has done concept and character design for The Lion King 2019 version and for several Avengers and Star Wars movies. I've given you a link to his site. Next week we will have another half a dozen from the Enchanted exhibition at the Rockwell Museum. Incidentally, to supplement the exhibition, the Norman Rockwell Museum has collected statements by some of the living artists about their work. You can download the Norman Rockwell Museum app in the Play Store or the iTunes Store to hear those. The Rockwell's site, which I've given you a link to, also offers several longer videos about this exhibition. DianeDuranteWriter.com has hundreds of posts on sculpture, painting, architecture, and my many other obsessions. To join the free Sunday Recommendations email list, visit the URL that's on the screen or email me. And you can say, "Well done, Diane," or support my work and receive rewards by means of the tip jar on DianeDuranteWriter.com. As always, thanks for listening.